The rain battered the windows of our cramped Brooklyn apartment, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in my chest. I stood in the doorway of Leo's room, clutching a crumpled $20 bill, my palms sweaty despite the chill. He was sprawled on his bed, shirtless, his dark curls falling into his eyes, looking at me like I'd just offered to sell him my soul instead of agreeing to his bizarre proposal. "I'm serious, Elliot," Leo said, his voice low, almost drowned out by the storm. "I haven't slept in weeks. You're here. You're broke. And I'm desperate. Just lie here. Help me sleep. That's it." His green eyes, usually sharp with sarcasm, were soft, pleading, and it twisted something deep inside me. I wasn't supposed to be here not like this. 3 months ago, I was just another struggling artist answering a Craigslist ad for a roommate. Leo Martinez, a med student with a chip on his shoulder and a smile that could disarm a bomb, needed someone to split the rent. I needed a roof. Simple. Except nothing about Leo was ever simple. He was a whirlwind of late-night study sessions, impromptu dance parties to old jazz records, and cryptic stories about his past in Miami that he'd drop like breadcrumbs, then snatch away. I'd been drawn to him from the start, but I kept my distance. I had to. I'd learned the hard way that wanting someone like Leo, someone who seemed untouchable, only led to heartbreak. But now, here he was, offering me $20 a night to be his sleep buddy. Not a euphemism, he swore. Just a weird quirk from his childhood. He said he slept better with someone nearby, a warm body to trick his brain into feeling safe. Insomnia had been eating him alive since his last breakup, and apparently, I was his last resort. I should have said no. I should have laughed it off and gone back to my sketchpad. But rent was due. My freelance gigs had dried up, and those green eyes were begging me to say yes. "Okay," I muttered, shoving the 20 into my pocket. "But if you snore, I'm charging double." He grinned, a flash of teeth that made my stomach flip. "Deal." That first night was awkward as hell. I lay on the edge of his bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, every creak of the mattress amplifying my nerves. Leo was inches away, his breathing uneven, like he was fighting sleep as much as chasing it. I could smell his cedarwood cologne, feel the heat radiating from him. I kept my hands locked at my sides, terrified of accidentally brushing against him. This was just a job, I told myself. Just a weird, platonic gig. But then, sometime in the night, it happened. My hand, heavy with sleep, slipped across the sheet and grazed his. A jolt shot through me, like I'd touched a live wire. His fingers twitched, curling slightly around mine. And for one heart-stopping moment, I thought he was awake. I froze, waiting for him to pull away, to laugh it off. But he didn't. His breathing slowed, deep and steady, and his hand stayed there, warm and heavy against mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, heart racing, staring at our joined hands like they were a puzzle I couldn't solve. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was just the broke artist, the guy who kept his head down and his heart locked away. Leo was the golden boy, the one who could have anyone. But that touch accidental, fleeting, felt like a spark in a room full of gasoline. The next morning, he didn't mention it. He just handed me another 20, made coffee, and acted like nothing had changed. But I saw it in his eyes, a flicker of something new, something dangerous. I should have quit right then. I should have known better than to play with fire. But I didn't. I went back the next night, and the night after that. By the third night, I was hooked. Not on the money, but on him. On the way his voice softened when he talked about his fears, his dreams, the way he'd hum old Cuban lullabies when he thought I was asleep. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way his laugh crinkled his eyes. The way he'd leave me half his sandwich when he knew I hadn't eaten. I was falling, and I hated myself for it. Because Leo wasn't just my roommate anymore. He was my employer, my sleep buddy, and now, my secret. The city outside our window kept moving, subways rattling, horns blaring, but inside, it was just us, trapped in this fragile bubble. I didn't know how long it could last before it burst. All I knew was that every night, when I climbed into his bed, I was gambling with something I couldn't afford to lose. It was the fifth night when things started to unravel. Leo had been quieter than usual, his usual banter replaced by long silences. I lay there, pretending to read, while he stared at the ceiling, his jaw tight. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Elliot, you ever feel like you're running from something, but you don't know what?" I turned to look at him, my heart thudding. All the time. He didn't look at me, but his hand shifted, brushing against mine again. This time, it wasn't an accident. His fingers laced through mine. Deliberate. Firm. My breath caught, and the room seemed to shrink, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. "Leo," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said, his voice raw. "Don't say it's a bad idea. I know it is. But I can't. I can't stop thinking about you." The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to pull away, to protect myself, but I couldn't. His grip tightened, and suddenly, he was closer, his face inches from mine. The storm outside had stopped, but inside, it was raging. I could see it in his eyes, the fear, the want, the same chaos I felt. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, like he'd been holding it back for weeks. My hands found his face, pulling him closer. And for a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the money, not the rules, not the world outside. Just him. Just us. But as quickly as it started, it stopped. He pulled back, his eyes wide, like he'd just woken up from a dream. "Shit," he whispered. "Elliot, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Don't," I said, echoing his earlier plea. "Don't apologize." He looked at me, his expression torn between guilt and something deeper. Something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. "This is dangerous," he said finally. "You know that, right?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, I know." But neither of us moved. We stayed there, hands still tangled, hearts pounding, caught in a moment that felt like it could burn us both to ash. And as the rain started up again, tapping against the window, I realized I didn't care. I'd take the fire. I'd take the risk. Because for the first time in years, I felt alive. The days after that kiss were a tightrope walk. Every glance, every brush of shoulders in our tiny kitchen felt like a test one wrong move, and we'd fall. Leo and I didn't talk about it, but the air between us had changed, charged with a current neither of us could ignore. I kept showing up to his room every night, $20 or not. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the way his hand would find mine in the dark, the way he'd whisper my name like a secret. But there was a shadow behind it all, a fear that this whatever it was couldn't last. Leo was still a med student with a future mapped out in crisp white coats and hospital corridors. I was just Elliot, the guy with paint-stained hands and a heart that kept leaping before looking. One night, about a week after the kiss, I found him sitting on the couch, surrounded by textbooks, his laptop screen glowing with an email he hadn't closed. I caught a glimpse of the sender's name, Gabriel. His ex. The one he never talked about, except in fragments that slipped out when he was too tired to guard his words. I didn't read the email, but the look on Leo's face told me enough. He was rattled. "You okay?" I asked, sitting across from him, keeping my voice light. He snapped the laptop shut, his jaw tight. Yeah, just old stuff. I wanted to push, to ask who Gabriel was, why his name still had this power over him. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed a beer from the fridge and slid it across the table. Want to talk about something else? He took the beer, his fingers brushing mine deliberate. Like always now. You ever think about leaving New York? He asked, out of nowhere. Starting over somewhere nobody knows you. The question caught me off guard. I leaned back, studying him. Sometimes. But I'd miss the chaos. Why? You planning to run away? He laughed, but it was hollow. Maybe. Sometimes I think I'm not built for this. He gestured vaguely at the textbooks. The apartment. Maybe his whole life. All this pressure to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect, I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. Not with me. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me again. But instead, he stood, pacing the small living room like a caged animal. You don't get it, Elliot. I'm not like you. You're free. You chase what you want, even if it's messy. I'm stuck. Man. My family. My career. All these expectations theory like chains. I stood too, closing the distance between us. So break them, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You're not a prisoner. Leo. You get to choose. He stopped pacing, his eyes searching mine. What if I choose wrong? Then you choose again, I said, stepping closer. That's how it works. He didn't pull away when I touched his arm, didn't flinch when my hand slid to his cheek. The kiss this time was slower, softer, but no less desperate. It was like we were trying to memorize each other, like we knew this couldn't last. And maybe it couldn't. But in that moment, with his hands in my hair and his breath warm against my lips, I didn't care. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Late-night talks that bled into dawn. Kisses in the hallway when we thought the other wasn't looking. Hands finding each other under the covers. But the shadow of Gabriel lingered. Leo's phone would buzz, and he'd tense, shoving it into his pocket like it burned him. I didn't ask, but I wondered. Was Gabriel the reason Leo was so scared to let Thesis reel? Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, the city quiet for once, and we were tangled together in his bed, his head on my chest. I thought he was asleep until he spoke, his voice barely audible. Gabriel was my first, he said, and my heart stopped. We were together for 2 years. He was everything, until he wasn't. I stayed silent, letting him talk. He told me about Gabriel charming, ambitious, the kind of guy who could light up a room but leave you in the dark. They'd met in college, fallen hard, but Gabriel's family didn't approve. Neither did Leo's. The pressure broke them, and Gabriel walked away, leaving Leo to pick up the pieces. I thought I was over it. Leo said, his voice cracking. But he's back in town. He wants to talk. My stomach twisted. What do you want? I asked, dreading the answer. He looked up at me, his eyes raw. I don't know. Elliot. I thought I did. But now Dangerou. System now? I'm not sure. I don't want to mess this up. He hesitated, his fingers tightening around mine. I don't know. Elliot. I thought I knew what I wanted. But now, I'm scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of what this means. Then we figure it out together, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. No running. Just us. He nodded, a small, fragile smile breaking through. Just us. The air in our apartment felt heavier after Leo's confession about Gabriel. I couldn't shake the image of this ghost from his past. A man who'd once held his heart and now threatened to unravel everything we'd built. Every time Leo's phone lit up with a new message, I braced myself, waiting for the moment he'd tell me he was leaving. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he threw himself into his studies, spending late nights at the library, coming home with shadows under his eyes. I kept up my end of our strange arrangement, lying beside him each night, our hands finding each other in the dark. But the silence between us grew louder, filled with questions neither of us dared to ask. Was this real? Or was I just a placeholder? A warm body to keep his nightmares at bay until Gabriel came back to claim him. One evening, I found him in the kitchen, staring at a pot of coffee like it held the answers to the universe. His shoulders were slumped. His usual spark dimmed. I couldn't stand it anymore. I dropped my sketchbook on the counter and crossed my arms. "Leo, talk to me," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "You're shutting me out." He flinched, like I'd caught him stealing. "I'm not," he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "I'm just stressed. Exams. Rotations. All of it." "Bullshit," I said, stepping closer. "This isn't about school. It's about him. Gabriel, you're different since he reached out." He dragged a hand through his curls, his jaw tight. "What do you want me to say?" "Elliot, that he fucked me up. That every time he texts, I feel like I'm 19 again, drowning in what could have been." I swallowed hard, the truth stinging more than I expected. "Do you still love him?" The question hung between us, sharp and heavy. Leo's eyes finally met mine, and they were raw, unguarded. "No," he said, but it sounded like a question. "I don't know. I loved who he was. Not who he is now. But he's familiar. Safe. In a fucked up way." "Safe." I laughed. "Bitter. He broke you. Leo, that's not safe. That's a minefield." He stepped closer, his hands reaching for me. But I backed away. "Elliot, please. I'm not choosing him over you. I'm just lost." I wanted to scream, to shake him until he saw what we had, what we could have. But I couldn't force him to choose me. So I nodded, my throat tight, and went to my room, closing the door on the ache in my chest. The next night, he didn't ask me to stay. I lay in my own bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd already lost him. But around 2 a.m., I heard his door creak open, his footsteps soft in the hallway. He stood in my doorway, silhouetted against the dim light, looking like a man on the edge of a cliff. "I don't want to sleep alone," he whispered. "Not tonight." I let him in, because I was weak, because I loved him. We didn't talk, didn't kiss, just lay there, his head on my shoulder, his breath warm against my skin. It felt like a goodbye, and I hated how much I wanted to hold on. The next day, I found a note on the kitchen counter, scrawled in Leo's messy handwriting. "Meeting Gabriel tonight. Need to close this chapter. I'm sorry." My heart sank, but I didn't crumple the note. I folded it, tucked it into my pocket, and went to my studio, pouring my anger into paint and canvas. Every stroke was a question, a fear, a plea for him to choose us. He came home late, his face unreadable. I was on the couch, pretending to read, when he sat beside me, closer than usual. "It's over," he said, his voice steady but tired. I told him I've moved on. He didn't take it well, but I don't owe him anything anymore. Relief flooded me, but it was tempered by caution. "And us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took my hand, his grip firm, I want this. Elliot, I want you. But I need time to figure out how to do this right. My family. My career. It's a lot. I nodded. Because what else could I do? Take your time. I said. Just don't shut me out. He kissed me then. Soft and slow. Like a promise. And for the first time in weeks, I believed we might make it. But life doesn't let you off that easy. A few days later, I got a call from my sister, Mia, back in Ohio. Our mom was sick cancer. Advanced. She needed me home. I told Leo that night, my voice breaking as I packed a bag. He didn't hesitate, just pulled me into his arms, his strength anchoring me. I'm coming with you, he said. You don't do this alone. I tried to argue, but he wouldn't hear it. You're not just my sleep buddy, Elliot. You're my home. Ohio was a blur of hospital rooms and hushed conversations. Leo was a rock, driving me to appointments, charming the nurses, and holding my hand through the worst of it. My mom, frail but still sharp, took one look at him and said, Elliot, you better not screw this up. I laughed, because it was the first time I'd felt light in days. Back in our hotel room, we'd collapse into bed, too exhausted to do more than hold each other. But those nights, with his arms around me, felt like the truest thing I'd ever known. He wasn't just there for me, he was part of me, woven into the messy, beautiful tapestry of my life. When we returned to Brooklyn, things felt different. Lighter. Somehow, Leo started talking about the future, not just his, but ours. One night, over takeout pizza, he slid a key across the table. Move into my room, he said, not as my sleep buddy, as my partner. I stared at the key, my heart pounding. You sure? I asked, because I needed to hear it. I've never been surer, he said, his green eyes steady. I love you, Elliot. I'm done running. I took the key, and we kissed until the pizza went cold, until the world outside our window faded away. It wasn't perfect as family still loomed, and my mom's treatment was a long road, but it was ours. That accidental touch, that spark in the dark, had ignited something neither of us could extinguish. Months later, we stood together at a small gallery show. My paintings on the walls, Leo's hand in mine. One canvas, tucked in the corner, was my favorite, a swirl of blues and golds. Two figures reaching for each other against a stormy sky. The title card read, One Touch. A critic asked what inspired it. I glanced at Leo, his smile soft and knowing, and said, a moment that changed everything. We weren't just roommates anymore. We weren't just lovers. We were a promise, a risk, a fire that burned bright and dangerous. And we were worth it.